and we are calling this the Great New Parliament Telecast. As you well know, on the 28th of this month, something important is going to happen, not only in the fabric of a new India, but in the fabric of global civilization. In the end, it's just a building, but it symbolizes something special. It is going to become the ultimate home of the world's largest and greatest democracy. Now, we have been for generations told that free values, rights, fundamentals all emanate from elsewhere in the world, and we are just poor copies. That's not true. The truth is that this building is going to represent not only something special for Indians, it should represent something special in global history. Paths of progress are not a certainty. Great ideas, renaissances rise and fall. Sometimes they wither away. When you get an opportunity to start something anew, and this is not once in a lifetime or once in a century, a parliament in India will never again be built. There will be no reason for one. So now we want to spend 60 minutes, and I'm going to invite some fine minds from across the spectrum, and I want to have an open, freewheeling conversation. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is just for ideation. Just ideas on how this can become symbolic, not just for Indians, but for the world. Now, you've already seen the Home Minister of this country come out this morning and educate us on something that I honestly did not know, that there was something lying in the Allahabad Museum which represented just and fair rule from Tamil Nadu, which is now going to be displayed right behind the Speaker's chair in the Lok Sabha. Something that was traditional in India, as traditional as the more familiar nomenclatures, the more familiar symbolisms of the 4 lions of Sarnath, the chakra of the 16 spokes that we have not only on our emblem, but also on our tricolor. So I am going to present and be bold enough to present some ideas, okay? And this is just off the cuff. And I'm going to request and invite all my panelists today to join in this conversation. Ambassador Deepak Vora is with us, Hindul Singh Gupta is with us, Feroz Bakht Ahmed joining us, Sharat Kohli joining us, and Gautam Mukherjee all joining us. All of them familiar faces on NewsX. I appreciate all of you taking out time to have this rather abstract conversation. I know there's a massive political debate who inaugurates Parliament. I promise you we'll get to that later. This is about ideas. So, ladies and gentlemen, I am going to present an idea. Okay, number one, and this is with the conversation with my colleagues yesterday. That in the new Indian Parliament building, let us install a torch, like the Olympic torch, like the Amar Jawan Jyoti, and let this torch of democracy be carried in a relay all across global capitals. We're going to put these reflections on your screens once my team catches up with me. So here is an idea of how we can spread this message all over the world, make it a global event, not just an Indian event. We are also suggesting that this new Parliament building is going to have hundreds of rooms. Why not the committee rooms and meeting rooms and MPs' offices? We generally put portraits and paintings and name the rooms after famous people or legendary people, both present and posthumous. Why not pick a selection of ordinary Indians from all over the country, all the states, and name these meeting rooms after them and invite them for their own mini inaugurals inside Parliament, truly dedicated to the people. Point number 3, let's have a statue. We have the Gandhi statue and all the other historical figure statue. Let's have a statue representing the everyman, the every person of this country in Parliament. Let that be the lynch point of starting every future Parliament session. Why not bring soil and saplings of native trees from all the 30 odd states of India and plant them in the gardens of the parliament? Why not, in fact, create a parliamentary nursery for these saplings so that these trees can be sent to be planted in parliament buildings all across the world? Let the message emanate once again of the world's largest and greatest democracy. This is the beacon of freedom and democratic hope. You've been told for the past century that that beacon lies elsewhere. I would like to think humbly it lies here. Let's open up this conversation. Hindol Sen Gupta, something iconic is about to happen. We are fortunate enough to be sitting here to witness this. How do we now send this global message that this is now the new home of the world's largest and greatest democracy?
Rishabh, thank you for having me. If this moment of a triangular new parliament representing the trinity that undergirds Indian civilization and the transfer of the Sengol once used by the great Cholas in their 1500-year rule, which most Indians don't know and don't care, if that transition is not representative of India as a civilizational state, then I don't know what can. Today, and this parliament, the inaugural of this parliament building, Rishabh, according to me, underlines forever, for all times to come, India was, is, and forever shall be a civilizational state. Its democracy, unity, foundations, philosophies, all of which must burn. You mentioned the torch. I hope this torch, when it finally returns home, burns like the eternal fire of the Agnis of our rishis that are mentioned in our great civilizational texts, an undying fire to the philosophies of Indian tradition and culture, signifying that India is a civilizational state and everything that India has to offer emanates from that civilization. Without that civilization, India shall be nothing. So I think this moment underlines forever that one singular fact, that 70 years of Indian democracy tried to wipe out, but it cannot be wiped out anymore.
Okay, so we have thinkers and movers and shakers here, and let's do our bit. I'm trying to do my bit. The government is doing its bit. The contractors and the laborers have done their bit, and they will forever remember. It will go down into the annals of their family history. That I was the architect, I was the laborer, I built this, I installed this, in the new parliament building. And let this go down. So I just want you to think, Ambassador Vora, I know you would have visited, South Block. I know Hindol would have for sure, would have visited offices there. In fact, all my panelists would have had the opportunity to go to North Block or South Block. As you enter in the main gateway, there's a very patronizing English inscription. And this I remember it from memory. Liberty does not descend upon a people must raise themselves to liberty. It is a privilege that has to be earned before it can be enjoyed. That was Lutyens and Baker telling you that you guys don't yet deserve freedom. Okay? Now we built our own parliament building, with all due respect to the old parliament building, but the old parliament building did not represent a democracy. It represented the Chamber of Princes. It represented the Viceroy's Council. It represented, the cabinet was the Viceroy's Privy Council. This is what it was meant to represent. This should represent something else. How do we make it, Ambassador Vora, resonate all across the world?
Thank you very much, Mr. Gulati. Always a pleasure to be with you on NewsX, and I'm honored and delighted, and also a little intimidated by the presence of these outstanding intellectuals, Mr. Mukherjee, Mr. Sengupta, Dr. Kohli, and Mr. Ahmed. I'm in New York at the moment. The time here is 08:40 in the morning, and so I'm wearing a sweater because the temperature is 8 degrees Celsius. Yet there is tremendous warmth and excitement in my heart. May I just say to you a few things? This is a brilliant idea, and I congratulate you on discussing this. You've talked about ideation. So the ideas of the future today are the realities of tomorrow. Symbols are very powerful as expressions of the united will and memory of a people. Sansad, by the way, is the Sanskrit word for assembly. It means association, council, or parliament. In several Indo-Aryan languages, in Armenian, Sansad means council. Now, for me, it represents hope. The new Indian parliament is triangular. It has three sides up, if I'm not mistaken. The number three has always been considered as the most sacred number across religions and traditions. It represents the dynamic force of creation, the creative spirit, sometimes referred to as the fire of consciousness. The new building is a symbol of Resurgent India, showing to the world that it is possible to overcome a collective trauma of 200 years. You refer to the inscription in South Block. That was my first regular job. I worked there and I joined the Foreign Service in July of 1973. We went in and we saw that inscription. You know, sir, I don't want to say this, but I think it needs to be said. Outside the camp in Auschwitz, where the Jews were slaughtered by a fellow called Adolf Hitler, there was a sign, "Work makes you free." And that can be done by anybody. I mean, the worst characters of the world have invented this kind of nonsense. But today, this represents the spirit of Resurgent India. And let me put it to you like this. I want to quote one of India's greatest thinkers, one of India's greatest sons, Sri Aurobindo, who had said 115 years ago, that India was rising to share the eternal light entrusted to her. India has always existed for humanity and not for herself. I think there can be no more powerful expression of the Indian spirit.
Yeah, well said. And there's this premise I'm just putting forth, and I'll come back to you, sir. It's just let's think, because we in our own part, in our own small ways, have to be part of this story. And it's a lucky opportunity to be here at this point of time to witness this take place. Sharad Kohli is with us. Sharad ji, how do we now resonate this across the globe, across the country, across the globe, as the Loktantrik, democratic Vishwa Guru?
Well, thank you so much, Rishabh, and glad to be part of this wonderful debate and a wonderful prelude, I would say, to the great occasion that we are heading for. Two things. I mean, I saw 5 of your grand ideas, beautiful ideas, I must say, out of the box. I can maybe add the 6th one when it comes to the physical form or installing a physical symbol at the building of the parliament, which could be that you could probably create small miniatures of the assemblies around the state and create a separate space there where all the assemblies of the states could be there in a miniature form. That's my physical idea that I can probably add to your 5 ideas. But I would like to add another idea, which I'm not sure you would like to call this out of box, because the Parliament building is going to be new, Rishabh. But the note or the spirit in which it is starting, you spoke about, you briefly touched upon that. It doesn't seem to be sounding of a perfect parliamentary democracy. So I would want an oath book on the big wall of this hall, of this parliament, where all the political parties, as of today, of course, we may have more political parties in future, some of these might disappear, whatever be the case, but as of the date of inauguration, Rishabh, I want all of them to sign an oath that this would be projected as world's most beautiful and largest democracy. The ethos that we represent, the principles that we represent, the philosophy that we represent, that should come in action as well. So what I would ideally want, since you are creating and not just an ideation, but also an ideal situation, I would want all political parties, especially 19 of them who have been very vociferous about, which you're going to touch upon later, let me not bring it right now. I would want them to sign an oath book that they would allow this new temple of democracy to work in its spirit. They would not disrupt it. You can protest, you can have your voice, you can have a difference of opinion, you may have a complaint about something, but you would not allow this temple of democracy to be disrupted.
Many of the politicians want to miss the moment. They don't want to be there. Because we are still seeing it through a political lens. I just want you to think about the point that the Congress was the front runner, but we did have other political organizations. The CPI, for example, was founded in 1915, 1920. So imagine if Nehru was coming to raise the tricolor in 47 and most of us said, no, we boycotted because why is it Nehru? Because theoretically you could argue that the head of state was the Governor General. So then you would have the irony of Mountbatten raising the Indian flag. That would have been a bit of an embarrassment. So we can get stuck in these kind of things forever. There's a moment. This moment is not going to be replicated, at least in our lifetimes, not in this century for sure. So why miss the moment? Anyway, that's separate conversation for a later time. Let me get Gautam Mukherjee into this conversation. Firozji also standing by. Gautamji, this concept of Loktantrik Vishwaguru, the symbolism of democracy, and we are the world's largest, and whether good, bad, ugly, we are the one that works the best. How do we make this resonate?
Well, I think it does it all by itself. This has come, to back up a bit. When the British came here, despite their empire, which was growing at the time, they noticed that they were a poor second to the Maharajas and the Nawabs and the pomp and splendor that was here in India. Then they very consciously developed a lot of protocol to go and raise themselves above all the 565 princes and the people of India as an imperial power. When they decided to run away from Bengal and come here in 1911, they built Lachan's Delhi for nearly 30 years and ended up leaving at the end of it. It was meant to be very, very imposing, particularly Viceregal Lodge, which is now Rashtrapati Bhavan. But off they went. As you rightly pointed out, our old parliament was really the chamber of princes, which was meant to be an echo chamber to the Viceregal Council. And the ones that echoed the Viceregal policies best were elevated within it.
Well,
we have come to a new parliament building with an Indian architect, with the requirements of the 21st century and beyond, at a time when India is on its way to becoming the third largest power in the world. Economic power naturally will go with all sorts of other, accoutrements like military power and so on in due course. Vishwaguru is a title that has emerged partially from the government PR machine and partly from the fact that we are an old civilization that has retained a lot of its old civilization.
No,
despite
I would disagree, sir.
colonized.
We are now beginning to retain. I don't know if that's correct grammar, but
No,
we are bringing back.
I meant it a little bit differently. What I'm trying to say is that we have survived years, centuries of colonial domination without losing the plot.
Okay. So let me put this on record. So when the news came that the parliament would be inaugurated this year, we reached out to one of the daughters of Edwin Lutyens, and she sent a rather caustic reply. She's saying, "You are ruining my father's city. Just look at the sheer arrogance of the attitude. That's 80 years later, you still think this is your father's city." No, it's not. It never was. Firoz Bakht Ahmed on the broadcast with me. Firozji, the world's largest, and I would think so, greatest democracy is going to have its greatest building, greatest temple to democracy, whatever you want to call it. How do we make this moment resonate across the globe, sir?
Rishabh, thank you so much for calling me in. And I think yesterday, Uday Pratap, through your channel, in fact, he did a program which was a curtain raiser for the history of Delhi, right from the time when Delhi got, it came onto the format of the earth, and then how it came under Pandavas, Kauravas, Pandavas, then, the Sultanate, then after that, the Mughals, English, and now our own government. For this new, Parliament's building, I have framed a couplet. If you allow me, this is a couplet in Urdu. The couplet is, नई इमारतें पार्लिमानी दिल्ली है बहुत रिफत, रिफत मीन्स वंडरफुल, नई इमारतें पार्लिमानी दिल्ली है बहुत रिफत, दिल रहता है यहाँ जहाने जमहूरियत, इसके होने से होगा ज़ौक़े खिदमत खलक दोचन, क्या इमारत है दिल अफरोज, दिल आरा दिल बन. All this means that this is a wonderful and historic occasion, and this building will enable the people inside it who represent their public, that is the members of parliament. I mean, they will actually work with double energy and enthusiasm once they are inside the building.
Okay.
And undoubtedly, it is one of the most famous, rather I should say the most famous monument. This is just like, that image of Sardar Patel in Gujarat. It is, I think, no lesser a monument compared to that. And we might not be there hundreds of years later on, but this, when Shah Jahan was building his Jama Masjid, people said, oh, come on, what Jama Masjid? We can pray in our local mosques. But then Jama Masjid remains till date. In the same way, Prime Minister Modi's dream parliament will also remain as the parliament of the world. So I think it has something wonderful has happened to India in the form of this new parliament.
Yeah, so we've got the physical structure, okay. It should weigh heavily on everybody who now swears in, sits down on these benches in parliament, okay, of a new India that they begin to represent. So it gives us a chance. But the rest of us have a stakeholding, and I'm self-appointing myself to a stakeholding of making this, sending out this message all across the globe.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.